Lightbird 58 is here. Kita's here. Firefly. Fritz is here. Nola, Patriot City. Hey Joel. Rachel Mega. Sings and Sows. Gary, NorCal. How is everybody doing this Saturday? I hope it's Saturday. If it's not Saturday, let me know. Half the time I don't know what day of the week it is. Let me share this out on Twitter. I'm getting better. Hey, what's going on, Collie Man? Janet? Lori? James? Mary Grace? How is everybody doing? I hope you're doing well. Snowing there? It's not snowing here. Mustard hearts. It's Sunday in Tasmania. That is true. That is true. I am doing well. My back was feeling pretty good this morning, so I got up and trimmed my palm trees, which had a lot of dead branches hanging down, making a mess. So I got out the ladder and the saw, and I cut a bunch of palm tree branches off, and they're in a pile out in the backyard. So got some fresh air, got a little bit of exercise. Hey, what's going on, Lisa? Perna. Nice in Houston. You ordered 3 books this week. Well, bless your heart. Thank you. Hey, from McKinney, Texas. Cold and snowy in Harrisburg. I'll bet it is. I'll bet it is. I grew up in Wisconsin. I know all about what mid-February weather is like in the Midwest. Cold, snowy, and windy. Do I climb my palm trees bare feet like a monkey? No, I don't. I have an actual really nice, a nice ladder that I use. I have a very long pole saw that I can reach branches that are about 20 feet from the ground without getting on the ladder. If they're taller than 20 feet, I get on the ladder and saw them down. I had to watch some YouTube videos to figure out how to trim palm trees the right way. Problems of living in the desert Southwest. 30s in Wisconsin and windy. Right on. Yeah. All right. I need to get this going because Stevie Bang Bang is going to be doing the Bang Bang Bar tonight, and I do not want to run over. They're going to start at 6 o'clock Mountain Time, 7 o'clock Pacific. That would be 5 o'clock Central, 4 o'clock, no, other way around. Anyway, they're going to be on 7 Pacific. That would be 8 o'clock Central, 8 o'clock Mountain, 9 o'clock Central, 10 o'clock Pacific, or Eastern. I'm all messed up. I need more coffee. So, because Bang Bang Bar is on tonight, I need to get cracking. Because these scopes tend to go for like 2 hours. I'm going to do my latest queue update, which is about 1 hour and 15 minutes. I produced it last night. There are no more queue drops. So it's already 7 o'clock where you are, right? Yeah. So my time zone is messed up. I was thinking about cutting palm trees. I wasn't thinking about time zones today. Can only think of one thing at a time. This queue update will be about 1 hour and 10, hour and 15 minutes. I did it last night. There are no more new queue posts, so this gets us caught up with everything. And I'm going to get this rolling so we can get this done. I'll stick around. At the end, we'll do some question and answer if you all have questions. Hey there, Debbie. Dreams. Yep, I had some dreams. I may have to go run in my bedroom and look at my dream cards while the queue update is rolling. That'll give me some time to run away. Cool thing about using Periscope Producer is this is all produced in a movie. I'm just going to play the movie, and then I'm going to go run and get my dream cards, and I'll tell you about the dreams if I have any that I can tell you about. All right? I will share out the Bang Bang Bar. You know, you can be on the Bang Bang Bar if you want. Bang Bang Bar is an open mic. You can just show up there. You go to a Zoom website. You let the Zoom have access to your camera and your microphone. You can go on the Bang Bang bar and hang out with 7 or 8 of our closest friends and chat and ask questions and answers, and it's pretty cool. Q has moved. Q has moved. Don't freak out. You can find Q's posts on QAnonpost.com. Let me put it in the chat. Q's new site it's just QAnonposts.com. And there it is. You can go there. That's the safe site to go to where if you don't want to go on 8chan and play with the Anons. All right, let me get this rocking and rolling. Yeah, it's safe. If you don't want to get into the pornography and the nonsense that goes on 8chan, that's the safe site to go to. All right, let me get this going. Hey everybody, thank you for joining me. This is Praying Medic with my QAnon update. It is Friday night, February 16th. This is my thread for Q posts beginning on February 12th, going until the present. I just checked Q and there have been no posts in the last half hour, so we should be good to go. The theme for this series is spread the word far and wide, and I think you'll see pretty soon why I've chosen that theme. So let's get started. This was a Q post the night of the 12th. It's going to read to you Operation Merlin Tech, Iran, North Korea, Iran deal, funding, Iran, North Korea, T-cells, payoffs, NK, nuclear, mini, suck, ICBM, suck, war engine, protection, Q. So let's decode this. So Operation Merlin Tech, and then Iran, North Korea. Operation Merlin, we know, was a CIA operation that was ostensibly designed to give Iran a flawed blueprint for a nuclear weapon. Q is suggesting that the real intent of that operation was to give Iran and then later North Korea a functional nuclear weapon. Lots of news articles about this. Operation Merlin has been heavily criticized. Jeffrey Sterling was prosecuted for leaking classified information to the press. It seems to have been a case of retaliation against a whistleblower. Here's an excerpt from an article. For CIA officials, the prosecution wasn't only to punish Sterling and frighten potential whistleblowers. It was also about payback, rewriting history, and assisting with a PR comeback for the operation as well as the agency. CIA got kind of a black eye over this operation. So this is another article. This is from Business Insider. Interesting article. Talks about James Risen and his long battle with 2 presidential administrations who threatened to sue him and throw him in jail because he would not divulge his confidential sources inside government. So worth looking into. It is a pretty interesting story. So the stringer here, Iran, North Korea, T-cells, payoffs. The Iran deal provided more than $1 billion to fund North Korea and then Iran's nuclear weapons program, terrorist cells, and necessary payoffs to public officials. If you have not read this article, it's by Politico, but it is an explosive article on the hidden parts of the Iran deal that we were not told about. It is a bombshell. It's a very long article, but it goes into the deal that we made where we allowed scientists to go back to Iran, and we freed some pretty bad people, gave up a lot of money. It was a very questionable operation. And if you're interested in that, I would definitely check out that article. All right. So the NK nuclear, this little stringer here, North Korea succeeds, at miniaturization of their nuclear weapon and developing an ICBM. The engine of war is created, and it can now offer them protection. Not too mysterious there. So in previous posts, Q has suggested that the master plan of the CIA, at least for rogue states like North Korea and Iran, is to perpetuate war, give them weapons, and then allow them, these rogue nations, to perpetuate war, which gives the CIA money from human trafficking, weapons trafficking, drug trafficking, sex trafficking. It gives them influence around the world. And they can use these rogue nations to do their bidding. Moving along, Q's next post is a photo of Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg with the Prime Minister of Vietnam when she visited Hanoi in August of 2015. Q says, "I hear Hanoi is educational." Q has a good sense of humor. Ruth Bader Ginsburg was in Hanoi to discuss intellectual property rights laws, actually. Yes, it is true that she did renew the marriage vows of an ambassador who's in a gay marriage. And I don't know that that's what Q is getting at. Some people have brought that up, but I'm going to move along to the next part of this story. When Justice Ginsburg went to Ho Chi Minh City later, she spoke on freedom of the press, another subject that Q has been discussing. Moving along, all right, I wanted to share this with you. Look, we all have things that we contribute to this conversation. I have a lot of dreams from God. Have been having them for a long time. And on February 13th, I had the following dream. In this dream, I was watching Q as he was posting. There were a lot of posts, and all of them had to do with the Supreme Court judges and cases that they were involved in. The posts clearly indicated corruption and even possibly conflict of interest with these cases. At the end of the dream, the text turned yellow. And what I saw was like almost like yellow text on a white page. And that was the end of the dream. My interpretation of the dream is that I believe Q is going to at some point tell us about or highlight corruption in the Supreme Court. So we will get to wait and see if that actually happens. So Q brought this one up again, and I'm glad. So I'm just going to read this to you. Think about the image drop. Think OP. Think united. When does the bird sing? Everything has meaning. There is a letter I in brackets and Q. So we get another swing at this. Think about the image drop. And think about the OP. OP is short for original post. Think united. And the word united is a capital U. It's not united as a team. I believe it's United Airlines. And Q had just posted about this a few days ago. So let's go back over this. Q posted this banner, which we know that was at Shanghai Airport, and it signified Gate E, where they picked up somebody and took him to Gitmo. That was a United Airlines flight going to Guantanamo Bay. He asked what checkout counter was there. I did some research, and I found out that it was actually at Gate E. They did international flights to the U.S., and it was United Airlines. So moving along, what picture was posted? Cages full. So one of the Anons posted a picture of a city skyline, and Q confirmed that was the picture. Cages is a reference to jail cells. All right, so we're looking at jail cells, we're looking at United Airlines, and a previous image, and when does a bird sing? All right, this is a book by Maya Angelou called I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. I finally got around to doing some research, and Q has been asking this question for months, and people have been telling me caged bird, or a bird sings at 4 o'clock in the morning, a bird sings at sunrise, a bird sings when it's caged, a bird sings, you know, all these different things. I think this is what Q is getting at. A bird in Q's vernacular, a bird sings when it's caged. All right, what does that have to do with anything? All right, Q has said, if we put it all together, when you sing, when a prisoner sings, they're telling everything they know about the crimes. You throw somebody in jail, you arrest them, and they're either going to sing, they're going to tell you everything they know, or they're going to face the full prosecution. So I think what Q is just getting at is that people have been put in jail, they're singing, they're telling what they know, and they are going to turn state's evidence and give us evidence that will implicate people higher up in the cabal. All right. This last little part of the stringer. Everything has meaning, and it's the letter I in brackets. I believe it is the capital letter I, not the letter L, and not the number 1. If you look at it closely, you can tell it's not the number 1. I think this has something to do with who was arrested. I think this has something to do with the company that the person worked for. But I'm not going to tell you who that is yet because I need more intel. So I'm going to wait, and if my suspicions pan out, I will eventually, you'll see who this person was that was arrested. Going to move along to this quite confusing post. What the heck does that mean? Military Intelligence Team, Military Intelligence Battalion, Strategic Signals Intelligence, Military Intelligence Brigade, Strategic Signals Intelligence, Designation, Military Intelligence Team, etc., etc. I found this, actually a friend of mine sent me a link who, I'll just click this link here and show you the page it came from. This comes from this page, and it's a U.S. Army Table of Organization and Equipment, and this part up here is that stringer that Q posted. This is just an outline of some military organization of equipment. Mission is to augment the military intelligence operations of the National Security Agency, NSA, in support of the Strategic Signals Intelligence, STRAT, SIGINT, operational intelligence mission of the United States Army. The characteristics of team, the makeup of the team, mobility, basics of allocation, etc. So if you're interested, you can click on that link. This is on my Twitter page, and you can look at this, but that is where that particular stringer comes from. What does it mean? I think it's just a way that Q is telling us about the type of people that he's working with. It could have some operational meaning for some, operation that he and his team are doing, maybe both, but that's where it came from. Let's see. This is a long post here. Lots of letters, stringers. There is a kill chain in here. Again, kill chain we've seen before in Q posts. It signifies the beginning of an operation where you put into action a series of steps that are going to end up with an attack of a target. And there's all these different things. I have no idea what these mean. I don't know that this is intended to, convey a lot of meaning to people like us, but I do want to just show you all of Q's posts. It means something to someone. All right, this one, warning to the EU, possible car attack, _72, strike package B7V, and warning UK, there's a lot of chatter going on. And Q posted a very similar post to this just like an hour ago, and it's not EU. This one is in London, and it's involved with a tunnel. I'll show you that one in just a little bit. But Q is just warning, and this is just to let you know, the image that Q posted along with this post tonight, there's a screenshot of a car, a bunch of cars in a tunnel in London. This, and the identifier on the photo is that it's from the NSA traffic camera. So that seems to be where this information is coming from. The next post by Q is a date. And if you look back in history, it is the date of the first submarine attack of the Revolutionary War. It was an attack where a guy used a thing called a turtle. It was a very primitive submarine made out of wood. It had lead weights attached to it. They went out and tried to attach a mine to a British ship that was off the coast, and they failed. But it was a change in the strategies and tactics of warfare. The man who invented the turtle went by the last name of Bushnell. He was commissioned as an Army engineer and would go on to be the first commander of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers at West Point. So a little bit of history. Q has told us that we are in the beginning stages of a second Revolutionary War, a war that is not fought with guns, but it is a war nonetheless. It's a battle over who is going to control our nation and the world. In war, there are milestones, and this was one for the first American patriots. All right, moving along to Q's next post. This is in reference to the shooting at the high school. Q asked, where are the tweets from Hillary, Bill Clinton, Chelsea Clinton, Barack Obama, and others? Do you believe in evil? Make no mistake, they will all pay the price. So Q here is implying that, not that they necessarily had something to do with it, but they weren't doing the usual, hey, let's get out on the social media and scream about gun control like a lot of these people do after we have a shooting. One of the Anons noted that they eventually did respond, but it was after Q posted. Q says, was my point proven? This board has more power than you can imagine. And these are the tweets. You can go to their timelines and you can check out the timestamps. They didn't tweet until after Q posted. All right, next post. Q responds to his own post, notes that the enemy is always watching what he's posting. He cites the recent announcements of the new drugs coming out, the flu vaccine, a new antibiotic found in dirt. These are all news headlines that came out in the last few days. Q is asking, is that a coincidence, or is the big pharma actually responding to the things that Q is posting? This is a link to an article about the flu. Experimental drug promises to kill the flu in a day. This was not, I tried to link to the Washington Post article about the new bacteria antibiotic that was found in the dirt, but Washington Post wouldn't let me link to it. But you can do a search and find that article easily enough. All right, so Q again responds to his own post and asks, did Hussein, Obama, receive a letter in the mail with a white powder? What a coincidence. Message received, response forthcoming. Q had actually said this previously. And when Q had said this a few days earlier, I suspected that Q was referring to the envelope that Don Trump Jr.'s wife received, which had a white powder in it. So Q is essentially suggesting that there may have been a little tit for tat over this incident. All right. Q's next post, he's essentially trolling Edward Snowden after he retweeted a tweet by Zach Whitaker touting Italy's anti-corruption authority adoption of the Tor browser. And this is a really bad screenshot of the tweet. You can hardly read it, so I took some better screenshots. This is the tweet. I wish we had more of this. No reason why official government whistleblower or watchdog organizations don't adopt Tor services to help report wrongdoing and corruption, just like SecureDrop, which journalists already use. And there's a link to it's a news announcement by the Italian, I'll just show you this page here. I don't have to explain it. So it's the Italian Anti-Corruption Authority adopted the Tor browser as its official web browser for secure online reporting. And here, let me click on this. I'm going to move this so you can see it. Millions of people use Tor every day to evade surveillance and censorship. Tor's security and privacy protections enable activists to mobilize, journalists to report, and ordinary people to access blocked resources and avoid tracking. Well, you know, that's all well and good if it actually works. But Q is suggesting that all of these so-called secure services are not actually as secure as we're being told. And we're going to go down this rabbit hole a little bit deeper. There's some more posts here. So in the next post, one of the Anons is trying to get Q's attention and says, hey, we've been talking about Secure Drop. And he had previously posted this image. And if you can look down at the very bottom in this little yellow circle right down here, it says Apache. I believe there's an Apache website, and I'll show you the link to that. So this Anon was wanting to know if that is the mysterious reference to Apache that Q has been talking about for days. Here's a better picture of it. And Q says, great work, Anon. Is that confirmation? I don't know. I think Q is just telling the Anon, hey, glad you're doing your research. If you click on the link on that Secure Drop, it goes to this page. And this is in, I think, I'm not sure if this is Dutch or this is German, but you can switch it to French if you want, different languages. All right, next post by Q, watch the water. I don't know what that means exactly. Is it a warning that something is going on by the coastline, an attack by the water? I'm not sure. Lots of speculation of what that means, but I don't know. All right, Q has a little bit longer post, and this is just an encouragement to us who are following his posts. You're missing the connections. Continue to build a map. The map provides the key. The key spreads the truth. Truth shines light. Light saves humanity. Future proves past. Trust the plan. Q. Don't need a lot of decoding on that. All right. This is a post by an Anon, and Q responds, I almost killed myself doing heroin and painkillers, and then you came around. I started realizing I had purpose. I literally got sober for this shit. Thank you, Q. My mother hasn't seen me sober in over 10 years. We are with you. We will not give up, FF. I love it. We are restoring the Republic. Every day we strike. Every day we win. We are winning bigly. Cannot thank you enough. Q responds, you are a strong patriot. Do not give in. Fight, fight, fight. You have more friends than you can imagine. United we stand. God bless, Q. If Q is a LARP, if Q is a phony, Q is the most compassionate, cool LARP and phony I've ever met. And I have never met a phony online, a troll, a LARP, who is compassionate. Usually those types of people are selfish and they don't really care that much about other people. One reason why I believe in Q is because he has displayed a sincere love and compassion for others. So Q posted a link to an article, and I'm just going to read this to you. Newsweek problems, there's the link. Strike back against us, MSM not happy, conspiracy label. Reread breadcrumbs about conspiracy in the MSM coverage. Who will be next? They are here. They will try to discredit. They're stupid. They bring more eyes. The proofs are important. Proofs provide the new eyes the ability to question. This board in the coming months will be spread and discussed across all platforms. Important to be prepared. We will help. Truth always wins. Q. Before I show you the link to this story, I'd like to talk about this a little bit. So I've been wondering, a lot of us have been wondering, how long is Q going to be around? Is Q going to stop posting in the week or two? Is this just going to become another thing that we had some fond memories of for a few months? Well, I think in this post, Q is suggesting he's planning on sticking around. It's going to be around for a while, and this board is going to grow. It is going to be spread across multiple platforms. People are going to hear about it. It's going to become more and more of a phenomenon across the culture. And we need to get ready for that, because we are going to help the world understand what Q is sharing, why Q is doing this. We have to understand the proofs. We have to understand why we believe in Q. And we have to start planning about how we're going to get this message out to people on other platforms that don't know about Q. So I am already planning. I'm in the process of putting together a book on Q. I think I may title it QAnon Made Simple. And I'm working on an outline. I like doing this kind of thing. I am very, very excited about what Q is doing. I'm excited about being a part of this. And I want to help people understand what Q is all about. So you may be seeing a book from me in the next month or two, since Q is going to stick around for a while. Maybe it's good for someone to write a book explaining what Q is all about. All right. This is the article that Q linked to. So Newsweek, the first media victim of the storm, claims that the storm is the biggest fake news story of 2018. And here's a link to the article. Newsweek has been hit pretty hard. They got raided by the feds. Their finances have been under scrutiny by a grand jury for the last year and a half. And they are laying off people. They are having big financial problems. And Q is asking, who's next? New York Times? Washington Post? CNN? Stay tuned. Coming soon to a theater near you. Oh, Q asks, was the article retaliation for Newsweek being busted? How do they strike back? Well, they have the ability to call us conspiracy theorists. So they're going to write their articles, call us conspiracy theorists, tinfoil hat people. But what they don't realize is it's only going to draw more attention to Q. And Q is going to grow. And that is not a bad thing. So sit tight. It's going to get interesting. This is a link to a YouTube video, which is the Pledge of Allegiance. And, it's like a 45-second video where someone is saying the Pledge of Allegiance. This next post is quite long, so buckle your seatbelts. Denise and I went out to dinner last night, my wife, and we sat down, and she pulled out her tablet, and while we had dinner, we went and did some research on this, trying to figure out all these links. So I'm just going to read this to you. James Dolan, dead suicide. Aaron Swartz, dead suicide. Kevin Paulson, turned over Secure Drop to Freedom of the Press. Secure Drop, Freedom of the Press. Then you go to John Barlow, Snowden, Assange, John Cusack, Daniel Ellsberg, Glenn Greenwald, and Laura Poitras. Snowden and Cusack, things that can and cannot be said. Daniel Ellsberg, Pentagon Papers. Glenn Greenwald, Snowden and The Guardian. Laura Poitras, Snowden, The Program, Bill Binney. John Barlow, VP Algae Systems Treating Wastewater. Barlow and Clark, Burning Man. General Clark, anti-Trump, Westpac supports Clintons. I think the key is the media changing the narrative using Secure Drop, which is dictated heavily by Snowden. The big question is, who controls Snowden? And when I read this at first, I was like, oh my gosh, I know I have to go through and research all these people and find the links and find the articles and make the connections. So that's what we're going to do for the next 10 minutes. It might not take that long. I'm just going to show you the articles that I found. Again, if you want to come to my Twitter page, Praying Medic, it's just at Praying Medic. I have all these links. I'm also putting out on Facebook the Thread Reader app, which is very cool. It takes all of my Twitter posts and it aggregates them into a blog style post, so you can read it like it's a blog article, and it has the text and it has clickable links and embedded videos. So if you would prefer to just read it and click on the links and read them that way, the Thread Reader app on Twitter is actually really good. I'm posting those, like I said, on Facebook and Twitter for people who want to read them. So the first connection is James Dolan. He was co-founder of Freedom of the Press. He was found dead of apparent suicide. This is a Freedom of the Press article about his death. Died at the age of 36. Aaron Swartz, Internet Freedom Crusader, dies at the age of 26 of an apparent suicide. This is a Time magazine article. Was Aaron Swartz really killed by the government? There's just a lot of suspicious deaths among the people who founded Freedom of the Press. Kevin Paulson is an outspoken internet pioneer with a colorful past. This guy was a bit of a troublemaker when he was younger. Not going to lie to you. But he got his act together. He was a hacker, involved in a lot of different things, did get into some serious journalism. So he eventually got together and worked with the founders of SecureDrop, and then it ended up being turned over to Freedom of the Press Foundation. Regarding this particular string, John Barlow, Snowden, Assange, Cusack, Ellsberg, Glenn Greenwald, etc. These people are all, or were all at one time, members of the board of directors of Freedom of the Press Foundation, except for Assange. He never was. Assange worked with John Barlow to found and start up Freedom of the Press, but Assange was never part of the board of directors. All right. After Edward Snowden became president of Freedom of the Press Foundation, Freedom of the Press stopped processing donations to WikiLeaks and Julian Assange, which Assange argued was the whole point of beginning the Freedom of the Press Foundation. There's a lot of banks that wouldn't do transactions for them. So Freedom of the Press started up, and they were taking donations, and the money was going to WikiLeaks and Assange. But after Snowden kind of took over, they stopped doing that. So again, we have this interesting dynamic between Assange and Snowden. And it seems like every chance Snowden has to do something that is going to hurt Assange, he takes the opportunity to do it. All right, Things That Can and Cannot Be Said is a book. Cusack and Roy and Ellsberg traveled to Moscow in 2014 to meet with Snowden. They wrote some essays detailing their conversations with Snowden. Here's a link to the book if you'd like to check it out. Ellsberg is notorious for the Pentagon Papers. He was a whistleblower, worked inside government. There's a Wikipedia link for him. He was also a key member of this circle of people and his board of director. Glenn Greenwald's page on The Guardian. Greenwald was a reporter that Snowden leaked the NSA files to. And if you're interested, on The Guardian's website, there's an NSA files homepage. You can check out all that. If you don't know much about the NSA files, it might be worth looking into. Laura Poitras assisted Edward Snowden with his NSA leaks. She and Glenn Greenwald worked together to help Snowden leak the files. She's also a director. She directed the film Citizen 4, which is a documentary about Snowden. Here's an article about her and Snowden and the film Citizen 4. Bill Binney is also related to her. She did a mini documentary on Bill Binney. But first, let's look at this. This is an article that interviews Binney, and I'm just going to read this one excerpt. Among the leaked documents, and this is referring to the documents that Snowden leaked, are details of foreign intelligence gathering that do not fall under the handling of unlawful threats to American democracy, what Snowden described as his only concern. Binney, generally a fervent supporter of Snowden, told USA Today that Snowden's references to hacking into China went too far. So he is transitioning from a whistleblower to a traitor. George Packer of the New Yorker, who spent time with Poitras and company in Germany, writes in his detailed review of the film and the overall situation. So one of the problems with Snowden is that he didn't just take files that exposed the NSA's surveillance of Americans. He actually took, Binney says here in this article, 1.5 million pages of documents that were actually counterintelligence documents, and he never gave those to the press. That is highly questionable, and as Binney says, that is actually an act of treason. So I'm going to move along here. There's so many things to look at. So the program is a mini documentary by the New York Times where Binney discusses the NSA domestic spying abilities. This is definitely worth watching. It's just, if you can search for the program, New York Times, it's a little film. It's about, I don't know, 8 or 9 minutes long. It's actually very well done and gives plenty of information about what's going on with Binney and Ellsberg and the NSA spying. Moving along, the Anon brought up John Perry Barlow and a whole bunch of other related things. So his Algae Systems is a company that John Perry Barlow founded, whose goal was to pioneer ways to reclaim water, reduce pollution by using algae. And that is on the Dead Headland website. You can find that. Barlow, his list of accomplishments include being semi-official co-founder of the Burning Man Festival that is held every year outside of Black Rock, Nevada. If you don't know anything about the Burning Man Festival, you might want to check it out. I haven't gone to the Burning Man, but I have a number of friends who have gone there, and they actually go there and do ministry to people who need help and need prayer after they have their experiences there. So Barlow was heavily into that. And then the Anon mentioned that Wesley Clark, former Supreme Commander of the Allied Forces in Kosovo, attended the Burning Man one afternoon and hung out with Barlow. And here's an article to that. So he also mentions that Clark was anti-Trump. This is an NBC News interview where Clark basically says that Trump is acting immature and doesn't really know what he's doing with respect to foreign policy. This was during the campaign before Trump was elected. This is a more recent article, and it's an interview with Clark, and he was very impressed with Trump's handling of foreign policy during his trip to Poland. So Clark, I don't know if Clark is totally on board with Trump yet, but just some articles, interviews you can look at if you're interested. So the Anon finishes up with the observation that the key is that the media is changing the narrative using Secure Drop, which is dictated heavily by Snowden. And the big question is, who controls Snowden? If you haven't done much looking into Secure Drop and Freedom of the Press Foundation, it's worth looking into. The media is evidently using Secure Drop and using Tor browser to get information from confidential sources inside the government. We all know that the FBI and the Department of Justice and people in the intelligence community have been leaking classified information to reporters for a long time, but it really got bad during the Trump administration. It's tapered off a little bit because they've identified some leakers and gotten rid of them. But they do all this through Secure Drop. And they have this process where they use 2 laptop computers, they use flash drives. One computer is connected to the internet, the other one isn't. And they use these flash drives and they transfer files between the whistleblower or the leaker and the journalist. And if you're interested in knowing more about that process, it's worth looking into. But the big question is, who controls Snowden? I think we're seeing more and more exactly who controls Snowden. So Q responds, James Dolan, dead suicide. Swartz, dead suicide. Kevin Paulson turned over secure drop to freedom of the press. John Perry Barlow, 187, post name, drop. And then at Snowden, you are now a liability. So Q has previously suggested that these guys were not victims of suicide, that they were actually probably killed by the CIA. What I'm seeing in all this is the idea that the CIA needed to control the narrative of the mainstream media. And how do you do that when you have people who are all champions for freedom of the press? Well, what if you take over the Freedom of the Press Foundation, get rid of the founders who are hardcore freedom of the press people, put in patsies who are sympathetic to your agenda or maybe being blackmailed? They take over Secure Drop, they take over Freedom of the Press Foundation, they allow the CIA to monitor all the transfer of information, and that way the CIA can control the narrative, control the leaking, control the whistleblowers. That is what I see being played out here, and Snowden is a part of it. And Q says, you are now a liability. So we're going to go back to a post from January 27. One of the Anons mentioned Snowden would not have been able to get out of Hong Kong, HK, if the clowns, CIA, wanted him caught. Spook all along. And Q responds, Hong Kong allowed his passport to clear customs with the CIA in America and Department of Defense putting out a national security hold, WW, worldwide. How does he clear customs? How does he end up in Russia? Is it a coincidence? Who was the first agency he worked for? He worked for the CIA. Who taught him the game? Who assigned him with foreign ops? Why is this relevant? Future unlocks past. Watch the news. Spiderwebs, stop taking the sleeping pill. Q. So, like I said, we're learning more and more that Snowden has been working with the CIA all along. All right, and look, there's a reason why we need to know this. There is this perception that Snowden is a good guy. Snowden is a hero. He exposed the spying of the NSA. And it was good for the American people to know that the NSA was surveilling people and it was gathering all this data. But what we weren't told is that the exposure of the NSA and their spy program was probably all done by the CIA, because the CIA wants to get rid of the NSA and take over and become the predominant intelligence agency. And Snowden helped do that. So Assange is painted by the mainstream media as a rapist and a pedophile and all these, horrible things. But the entire time, I believe, Assange is a good person who is helping the cause, and Snowden is actually a black hat. All right, this post, Q is going after Jack Dorsey again. Civilian puppet, player in the game. We play for keeps. Need help sleeping? How is your meeting with Nancy Pelosi? Protection offered? Life lesson, be smarter than those controlling you. T-minus 1234. All right, so Jack Dorsey is useful to the puppet masters because he can suppress conservative views on social media. He can change algorithms. He can get the right narrative flowing on Twitter, and he is able to help manipulate the narrative. So that is why Jack is being used by the puppet masters. But Jack is coming under pressure from Q and his people on the Trump administration. who are playing for keeps. So evidently Jack had a meeting with Pelosi where they offered him protection. And Q says, look, you're not being very smart. Those people are dumb, and you're just as dumb as they are if you think they're going to protect you. T minus 12:34. 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't know what that means. It's obviously not 12 minutes and 34 seconds. But it's a countdown. Something is going to happen with Jack. So sit tight. We'll see what that is. All right. This is Q's next post, which is a link to a PDF and a YouTube video. And let me click on this. So the PDF is an intelligence senate.gov. It's a link to a hearing on MK Ultra. Q says, read it very carefully. Unreleased, classified at the highest. Ability to use frequencies and incoming signals, modify, encode, program over X period of time, designate mobile phone to control a target subject. Operation was conducted originally outside of the U.S. Car control, and there's a link to a YouTube video. Statement by the driver. The statement by the driver said that the brakes failed on the car. Fairy tale. As the world turns, this is bigger than anyone can imagine. All right, so this is the cover sheet from the link to the PDF. It was the hearing on the MK Ultra project, CIA's program of research and behavioral modification. This was a hearing at Senate Intel Committee 1977. This is a 172-page PDF, which is a transcript of the entire hearing, where the Senate Committee on Intelligence heard new evidence and new concerns about the CIA using mind control, essentially. I did take this screenshot. This is in the introduction. I'm just going to read a couple of sections here. Perhaps most disturbing of all was the fact that the extent of the experimentation on human subjects was unknown. The records of all these activities were destroyed in January '73 and at the instruction of this then CIA Director Richard Helms. In spite of persistent inquiries by both the Health Subcommittee and the Intelligence Committee, no additional records or information were forthcoming. So they did not know the extent of the experiments. Down here, the records reveal a far more extensive series of experiments than had previously been thought. 86 universities or institutions were involved. New instances of unethical behavior were revealed. So from the original investigations of the MK Ultra mind control programs, this is saying that the information they received back in the 50s did not fully cover all the experiments and all the universities involved, that the experiments were much more, involved a lot more people, a lot more universities, and the CIA was hiding a lot of what was actually happening. Imagine that, the CIA doing covert ops and not telling Congress the truth about it. So Q is bringing this to our attention for a reason. And this is the video. All right, so I'm going to play this video, and don't worry about the sound. It's just, there's a lot of wind noise in the camera. This is a presidential motorcade coming down the road, and in just a minute you're going to see a car come out of the woods on the right and try to ram the presidential motorcade unsuccessfully. They get into this concrete ditch and can't get past it, and then they're stopped by police.
Hey, by the way, look at that manhole right now. It is actually tackle welded shut. Right there. You can see the
And these are just average John Q. public out taking video of the presidential motorcade as it comes by. This is in Springfield, Missouri.
There he is. There's the beast.
And there's the car
Oh my gosh.
right there.
Look at that car that just came out of the woods.
Came out of the woods and got high centered on the grass and the sidewalk. And the police come and stop the person and interrogate them. And the story was, the guy said, my brakes weren't working. Well, this car is up in the woods. It's not on a driveway or a road. It's parked up in the woods, waiting for the presidential motorcade to come by and was going to ram the president's car. So there's a reason, again, why Q posted that. And Q says here, you know, this stringer is suggesting that the CIA is using some form of mind control, perhaps to use people like this to attack the president and other figures. So this is just some personal testimony. I've been contacted by a lot of people over the years who have wanted me to help them get free of mind control programming. I first received an email from someone, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago. And when I got my first email, it shook me because I didn't really know about MK Ultra and mind control. I had been praying for people to be healed. God was starting to teach me about emotional healing, but I didn't know much about it. And I knew nothing about MK Ultra and mind control. So I got this email from this woman who said she had implants. She heard, you know, noises and voices all the time, and there's a lot of very strange symptoms that people have when they are victims of mind control. I had to do some research, so I started reading articles and books. Mind control is done in a number of different ways. MK Ultra is just one way. Victims of satanic ritual abuse are also, their mind is being controlled through programming. High-level Freemasonry uses similar techniques. And they all use kind of the same process. For what it's worth, if you start looking into satanic ritual abuse, and I'm just going to go off on a little rabbit trail here for a few minutes. Our culture is very much in denial about the reality of satanic ritual abuse. The press, the government, mental health industry, if you just do a search for articles on satanic ritual abuse, you'll find dozens and dozens of articles that try to debunk the idea of satanic ritual abuse. They say it's not real, it's a figment of people's imagination, it's some artificial construct. It does not exist. I have over a dozen friends who are survivors of satanic ritual abuse. My friends and I, who operate in healing, have prayed for dozens of people, and we've seen a lot of success with these people getting healed of the ritual abuse and the mind control. So it is a real thing. MK Ultra and there's a lot of different types of mind control other than just MK Ultra. If you do some research, you'll find out more about them. The Wikipedia page on MK Ultra, just that is very interesting. The mind control programs that the CIA uses actually had their origin in Nazi Germany during World War II. Some of the scientists from Germany came over to North America. They helped the CIA get a foothold on this, and the CIA took it and ran with it. And, you know, officially, the CIA is not doing this anymore. However, unofficially, they're doing it probably now more than they ever were. If you are interested in going down a rabbit hole, one of my friends, Daniel Duval, does a lot of counseling and treatment of people who have been victims of mind control. We did a podcast, I think it's about an hour and a half long, where we talk about mind control, emotional trauma, and a lot of different subjects. It's podcast 51. Going Down the Rabbit Hole is the name of the podcast, because we cover a lot of various subjects. So if you want to check that out, there's a link to it. Kathy O'Brien's Transformation of America is a classic book on the CIA's mind control program. You might want to check that out if you're really interested in it. All right, next post. I hope you're ready for some more links. One of the Anons did some research and came up with a list of articles on mind control. And all of these come out of Canada. So it just basically talks about the different experiments and fines that were paid and how the government covered it up, and then it had to eventually admit that they were involved in all these experiments. And I'm not going to read this to you, but I will show you all these links down here. So the first link is the Wikipedia link to CIA activities in Canada. Very insightful. The second one is a link to, I'll click on this, and the Fifth Estate. So this is about MK Ultra in Canada. That was conducted at McGill University. The next link is CBC News. The Trudeau government had a gag order in CIA brainwashing cases and silenced its victims, said one attorney. You can find that news article, rather interesting. This is a New York Times article that says Canada agreed to pay victims of mind control programs that took place during the 1950s. This next link is, again, relates to Canada. So involving cases from 1957 to 1961, experiments that took place in Montreal. This next link goes to McGill Daily. Again, it's an MK Ultra article. So all of these relate to activities that are going on in Canada. If you need more information, there is no shortage. You can just do a search and you'll find a lot of information on that. So Q responds to the Anons list of links and says, have any recent shooters received therapy in the past? Be the autists that we know you are. You were chosen for a specific reason. Q. By the way, when we refer to autists on 8chan and 4chan, we're not talking about people with autism. The Anons who sometimes become obsessed with research, it's just the word autist is sometimes used for Anons. All right, so Q is telling them, we chose you guys because you're good researchers. Start digging and find the information. Q then reposts this particular post and reminds the researchers that the discoveries have to be original and they have to be found organically. They cannot be part of the hive mind or part of the echo chamber, part of, there's just a group of us sitting around, we're talking, and we all came to the same conclusions. Q is reminding them, no, you have to do research and you have to discover this on your own, because people are watching and they're going to know how you got this information. This is an article on WMD, and let me click on it. It gives a list of people who were involved in mass killings. And let me zoom in on this. It outlines the drugs that they were taking at the time that they committed their crimes. The Columbine mass killer, Eric Harris, was taking Luvox, which is like Prozac or Zoloft, so it is a serotonin reuptake inhibitor. Patrick Purdy went on to a schoolyard shooting in Stockton, California. Let's see, murdered 5 children, had been on amitriptyline, which is an antidepressant, as well as Thorazine. Kip Kinkle, 15, murdered his parents in 1998. and he was on Prozac and Ritalin. So this article just details all these different people involved in killings and the drugs that they were taking. Now, the question is, do you commit a murder because you are depressed and or psychotic and have a mental disease and you're taking the medication because you have the condition, or do you take the medication and then the medication causes you to have the symptoms or you become susceptible to killing? Which comes first? That is the question that Q and the rest of us need to answer. So next, a non-response to Q with an observation about cell phone technology. Throwing this out here, a little more info. I don't know if it has relevance. Cell phones were originally analog. The switch to digital was gradual. Digital signals allow for a much greater distance to be covered on less power, thus miniaturization of the phones, lighter batteries, lighter phones. Because of the nature of the square waves, much more effective at filtering noise and interference, this inherently means that phones today are going to be square wave signals and at very low power. If that alone were enough, Q would not exist. They would simply shut him down. So they may act as a trigger, but are not enough by themselves to completely program a human. And Parkland, the shooter, would suggest that you really need somebody who is largely predisposed toward moving in the desired direction to begin with. You can't just flip a switch and a born pacifist suddenly becomes Rambo. Talk to me, Johnny. All right, so let me have a little discussion about mind control. In the publicly available articles about the MK Ultra program, you can read about testimonies of college students who were enrolled in these mind control programs. And they took just average, everyday college students. They took them into these programs and they programmed them, and they used hypnosis, and they used a lot of different techniques. Sometimes they used drugs. And they took relatively passive people and were able to get them, by using programming, to assemble explosives, to deliver packages that they believed were had explosives in them, to take out a gun and shoot somebody thinking that the gun was loaded. They have proven that they could take passive people and turn them into killers through some simple training and programming. And it uses keywords and key phrases. Those are the triggers. A person just goes about their normal life for days, weeks, or years. And when you want to trigger that person into becoming the killer, you use a keyword or key phrase that triggers them. And they go and they do the activity that's associated with that trigger, and then they go back to being a passive, normal person. That is how the MK Ultra mind control program worked. That's part of what they did. And this is actually the basis of the movie The Manchurian Candidate. There's been a lot of other movies. Actually, the Jason Bourne series is based on the idea that Bourne was a victim of mind control and that he was turned into a killer through programming. So art imitates life. And no, you don't just flip a switch and turn somebody into a killer. You have to spend quite a bit of time programming that person and getting them to be compliant and breaking down their defenses. And at that point, you can then subvert their will, and you can force them to do things that are against their moral conscience. So moving along, Q has a response to this. Q says, what 3 scientists were killed who were researching the satellite relay of mobile phones signals to end users? Why was the research deemed classified? Learn Q. I've been looking in the various research groups. I haven't found anyone yet who has discovered who the 3 scientists were who were killed, who were doing the research. But that would probably be interesting to find out. Why was it classified? Well, because if people found out that you could use regular cell phone technology to control people's behavior, that might cause some problems. This is extra credit. I did a little research, and Iridium is a company that may be worth looking into. They are a global leader in satellite and cell phone technology. They provide communications for the Department of Defense. They are a global communications company. They have 66 satellites out. They create a network that covers the globe, and they do a lot of satellite cell phone technology. So I'm not saying that they're implicated, but that would be one company to research and see what they are up to. This is a Scientific American article on cell phones and how their signals affect brainwaves. You can just search this, Scientific American, mind control by cell phone. It doesn't actually suggest that cell phones can control your mind. It does provide some evidence that, and it's not really a scientific article, but it does suggest that the frequencies and the waves that are emitted by cell phones can interrupt sleep patterns and can have some effect on the frequencies that your brain operates at. All right, so an anon asks, are all the anons safe? And Q says, yes, you're safe. Nothing to worry about. And then you have to, this is another answer to a different question. Target subjects are predisposable to certain mental illnesses. Target subjects are scouted over a period of time to study and arrange therapy, in quotes. Therapy takes X to break the mind into functional programmable device. Science fiction? Q. All right. So let's look at this a little more. So subjects are scouted for susceptibility. Certain conditions make them more susceptible to programming. All the forms of mind control, whether it's SRA or MKUltra or personality cults, rely on the subjects that are being targeted to be trained through repetitive doctrines, ideas, rituals, until they become compliant, until it's ingrained and it's permanent. And there are certain types of personalities that are more susceptible to programming. Some people are very hard-willed and strong-willed, and they will resist programming, but there are some individuals that are pretty easy to program. We behave the way we do because our minds have been programmed a certain way. We eat at a certain time, wear certain clothes, listen to certain music, TV, because these things have become habitual through repetition, and repetition is programming. I'm not suggesting that the government has programmed all of us. However, it is easy to overlook how much of our behavior is a result of unconscious choices that function more like a computer's operating system than the product of conscious decision making. In many respects, our brain is something like a very sophisticated computer. It does work off of a kind of program. We have routines and rituals and practices that are almost like an operating system. And what Q is getting at here is that if you find someone who's susceptible, you can overwrite the code, you can overwrite their behavioral programming, you can introduce new programming, new code that will force them to act a certain way unconsciously, because that's what programming does. It creates unconscious actions and reactions and attitudes and behaviors. All right. This is the next post by an anon. MKUltra was successful and went into implementation. It's no longer called MKUltra. That was the development program name, and I think that's true. Q responds, why is Big Pharma essential? Expand your thinking past cures for treatments of diseases. Think about Google and the new Pixel phone. Think Apple versus Samsung. Why was BlackBerry destroyed? We can guide you, but you must organically uncover the truth. They are watching. Archive everything offline. So let's talk a little bit about this. Q has asked people to look into shooters and people who have done mass murders and look at their psychological history and look to see specifically if they're taking psychiatric meds. And then he asks, why is Big Pharma essential? I think what Q is getting at here is there is a link between the medications and the behavior of killing people. That somehow the CIA has figured out how to soften people up, how to predispose them, program them through, and use pharmaceuticals to help do that. All right, so what is up with Google and Apple and Samsung phones? Q is getting at some connection here, that the combination of a predisposed individual who with a psychiatric condition, if they're prepped with the right pharmaceuticals and programmed, and you use the right phone, you can trigger them and get them to do certain types of behavior. All right. Why was BlackBerry destroyed? That is not talking about why Hillary destroyed the Blackberries. That is asking why RIM, the maker of BlackBerry, why that company was put out of business. I don't know what the answer is to that. I think some people are researching that. I don't have an answer yet. But Q is telling them and telling us, if you discover the truth, archive it offline, because there are people that don't want us to have that information. All right, moving on. Q posted about the Consumer Protection Agency, Senator Warren. Corruption, infiltration, slush fund, goodbye. Q. So we have found out a lot about the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau since President Trump came into office, and particularly since Mick Mulvaney appointed himself as interim director of the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau. Basically, Mulvaney found out that this was nothing but a slush fund for Democrat causes. This bureau was not regulated, was not under any kind of congressional oversight, and the money came either from the Federal Reserve or the Treasury directly. I can't remember which one it was, but this was a very sketchy program, and Mulvaney has essentially asked for Trump to shut it down entirely, and they're not going to have a budget next year. So that is what that post is about. Q asks us to think about what is really happening in the world. I'm going to read this to you. Why is everything really made in China? Is it cost savings, or is it something else? Why is POTUS focused on Saudi Arabia, China, and Russia? Why? Why is Russia being used against POTUS? Why Russia? What damage can Russia do to the Dems? What damage can China do to the Dems? What about Iran? What about North Korea? Why does Obama travel before and after POTUS takes his foreign trips? Use logic. Why is POTUS focused on bringing back manufacturing? Is it jobs? Is it security? Is it control? What is true control? Who can you trust? The world is not how you view it. Trust the plan. We are winning. Arrests will come. Logic should answer why it must follow other unfolding events. Learn and spread. Build proofs. We've provided many proofs that cannot be disputed as coincidences. This was done for a reason. More will be provided. Direct confirmation will come. It cannot come now. It will be lost. The message is not ready. You are part of the army. We are depending on you for God and country. Where we go one, we go all. Stay safe this week. Q. All right, so at this point, I'd like to tell you about another dream. It's a dream I had last night, actually this morning. I've been up since 2:30 after I had this dream, and I'm a little tired. But this was one of the most fascinating dreams I've ever had. In the dream, I saw artistic representations of our culture. They were beautiful images, and I knew in the dream that each image represented some part of our culture. And as the dream progressed, I realized all of these images had given us false impressions, false ideas, had created a false paradigm of what life actually is about. And I realized in the dream that it was because the kings and the queens and the nobility and leaders over time have presented to us a false image of what is valuable, what life is all about. And except for our understanding of God, for some of us, for a lot of us, even our understanding of God has been perverted. But what I understood in the dream was we have been given a phony bill of goods, a phony depiction of what life is all about, of what culture really means, of what is valuable, what is good, and what is true. And in the dream, I knew that everything was going to start over again. Our entire culture was going to experience a paradigm shift. New standards, new values based on the truth, the real truth, not the truth we've been told for the last 3 or 4 or 500 years. So when Q says we're in a revolutionary war, he is not using hyperbole. This really is bigger than any of us understand. We really are going to undergo a paradigm shift. And the reason why all of this information is being given to us is because we need to get prepared for the shift and the change. It really is a great awakening. All right, moving along. This is a post by Q from this evening, and the first part of it is from Rod Rosenstein's announcement. There is no allegation in this indictment that any American was knowing participant in this illegal activity, Rosenstein said. There is no allegation in the indictment that the charged conduct altered the outcome of the 2016 election. So this is regarding the announcement by Robert Mueller that 13 Russians have been indicted for interfering in the election, which is rather ironic because we don't have an extradition treaty with Russia. And so these 13 Russians cannot actually be extradited or prosecuted for being involved in election hacking or whatever. And the funny thing, the really funny thing is, essentially this is a troll farm where Russian people are on social media and they're trying to express their opinions and views and ideas on the election, which is what people do from every country. Politicians from Great Britain and from Spain and France and Germany have expressed their views about American elections. I don't really understand why Mueller decided to indict 13 Russians for trying to get on social media and change. But what Rosenstein said here is with these 13 indictments, this is the important part. There is no allegation in this indictment that any American was a knowing participant in this activity. That means nobody on the Trump team, not President Trump, not anyone on his team, was involved in any illegal activity with respect to the election. So yes, that means that the Mueller investigation has concluded there is no collusion, no illegal activity, and no guilt on the part of any American citizens. So essentially, Mueller has cleared Trump and his team of any collusion, and that narrative will hopefully die a quick and painful death. Now, the second part of this is very interesting. Future proves past. I'm just going to read this to you. And it says, in an effort to preserve the integrity of all U.S. elections, as ordered by the President of the United States, after an extensive investigation in selected counties, the sampling, Department of Homeland Security has concluded that while Russian entities, as outlined within Mueller's investigation, were complicit in attempting to undermine the presidential election of 2016, had no direct impact or bearing on the outcome of the election, nor were any U.S. persons knowingly part of such an attempt to sabotage it as relates to the Russian investigation. U.S. and other foreign entities, as further described with DHS, acting outside of Russian agents, did attempt on numerous occasions and were successful in interfering with the presidential election of 2016, Senate elections of X, Y, and Z, X elections whereby several million illegal non-resident ballots, the irregularities, were counted, while legal ballots were improperly tabulated and or intentionally mishandled. We believe these actions were a coordinated attack against the democracy of our country. Now, this is talking about the Senate elections and illegal non-resident ballots and manipulation of legal ballots. So that is election fraud. Homeland Security will be submitting a final report to the White House and Department of Justice and other state and local agencies, outlining our findings as early as March of 2018. While this report only encompasses a sampling of 22 counties across the U.S., it is strongly suggested, based on the evidence provided, that a mandated countrywide investigation begin under the recommended U.S. 50 EIC guidelines as set forth in Section 7 of the final report. Furthermore, based on our immediate findings, we recommend the adoption of E8, E, F, G, and H be made immediately to combat sources and methods currently being deployed. So, you're not going to find this anywhere on the internet. I looked. This is part of what I believe is an as of yet unpublished report that will be coming out as early as March, and it's part of the Homeland Security investigation into election fraud. So Q claims to have access to and has given us part of the report that will be filed with Homeland Security in March, and it details part of the investigation into election fraud. Future proves past indeed. If we find this document in the Homeland Security report that comes out in March or April, we will know that Q is probably who Q says he is. All right, so Q just posted this a few hours ago. And yep, it is a picture of a sky and some palm trees. It looks like it could be taken in my backyard. It says, I think there's a, it says I'm waiting. Oh, just waiting is what it says. That's the title of the picture. All right, Anon posted this screenshot from the book, Behold a Pale Horse. Let me zoom in on this. All right, Anons, I've been following these drops since day one, but this is my the first I'm hearing of this book, Behold a Pale Horse, from 1991 by Bill Cooper. It actually describes clowns, CIA, planning to use school shootings as a way to disarm the citizenry. It looks legit to me, astonishing as the quotes are, what say you all? So here is the information on the book. Here's a link to it, and then this is a description. Q says this is big. And this is a larger image. I'm just going to read this. The government encouraged the manufacture and importation of military firearms for the criminals to use. This is intended to foster a feeling of insecurity, which would lead the American people to voluntarily disarm themselves by passing laws against firearms. Using drugs and hypnosis on mental patients in a process called Orion, The CIA inculcated the desire in these people to open fire on schoolyards and thus inflame the anti-gun lobby. This plan is well underway and so far is working perfectly. The middle class is begging for the government to do away with the Second Amendment. And this book was written in 1991. So, something to think about. This is Q's next post. Clown agency, arrow, no such agency. Rest in peace, JFK. We will succeed. Pyramid will collapse. Think shell, Q. My interpretation, the clown agency will become no such agency. The CIA will cease to exist. Clowns are an endangered species. Just a few minutes ago, Q posted a picture from the NSA traffic camera. It's a warning to the UK to be on the alert for trouble. And also posted this stringer with it. And let me check to see if Q has any more posts before I produce this video. Nope. I think that is it. All right, that gets us caught up on all of the Q posts. Thank you very much for joining me again. Thank you for praying for our leaders. Thank you for praying for me. Thank you for spreading the word and getting this out and red pilling the normies. Those of you who are supporting me financially. All right, folks, that is my Q post. That should hopefully get us caught up to today. I have a little bit of time to answer some questions. If you have any questions that I can answer. Let me look at the chat, see what's going on. I'm glad you like this. I'm not going to lie, this is a lot of research. when Q is dropping, my life becomes doing research. And I'm glad you all appreciate the work that I do. Some guy said I have the perfect voice to do Q drops. I don't know what that means, but I'm glad it's helping you all. More about the dream, please. I did not have a dream in the last couple of days that I can talk about. But there was that one dream about, there was two dreams. One was about the Supreme Court, and there's another one about just this new paradigm, this new way of viewing the world, a new way of seeing things. And the way I described it was so much less than what I actually saw in the dream. It's hard to describe some dreams. Who or what will replace the mainstream media? That is a good question. You are watching right now what is going to replace the mainstream media. When the Lord gave me these dreams about President Trump having this war with the media about a year ago, I saw the mainstream media being destroyed. And I also had a lot of dreams at that time where an alternative media was being built from average people like us on Periscope, on Facebook Live, setting up our own little broadcasting studios. And I believe we are going to replace the mainstream media. I believe average people are going to be raised up and they will replace CNN and New York Times, and it's going to be a whole new ballgame. Jerome Corsi is on CBTS. Q has more drops. Oh, dear Lord. Hang on. I'm checking Q's page right now. Let's see if there's anything new. I'm going to refresh the page here. I'm on QAnon posts and I'm not seeing anything new. Let me go to Great Awakening and see if there's anything new there. I don't see anything new on Great Awakening either, so I don't think Q has posted anything new. Not that I can tell. Project Mockingbird is dead. You know, the projects, Project Mockingbird, Project Paperclip, Project MK Ultra, those are all projects. They're all research projects where the intelligence communities do research. When the research gives them the results they want, it's no longer a project. They just do it. And so the mainstream media is heavily infiltrated by the intelligence community. Trust me. And that's going to be exposed. Yes, Q had better wait for me. Q had better take a couple of days off so I can work on a book or two or a class, something that'll make money, because we have bills to pay. Although the financial support does help. Operation Mockingbird was an operation that was, I know it involved the FBI. I think it also involved the CIA, where they took agents and had them pose as journalists and reporters. They infiltrated the news media, and they controlled the narrative. They helped control the media, and they were able to essentially put out deep state propaganda. And it worked so well that the operation kind of went away. And now we just have journalists who are working for or are trained by and operatives for the FBI, the CIA, and different three-letter agencies. So that's Operation Mockingbird. Q has brought that up several times. CNN is CIA. Well, we know that Anderson Cooper is, and I believe there are a lot of other journalists who are CIA operatives. I would imagine Mika Brzezinski is probably, and several other people. The Q book would be a great seller. I think people would really like it. My YouTube channel is just going bonkers with the Q videos. So people seem to be really interested in learning about Q. And I love taking complex ideas and breaking them down and making them simple. So I think a Q Made Simple book would probably help people out and probably sell. Why is the media moving so far left? Well, because that is what the globalists want them to do. They want to turn the world into a socialist state. Farther left, the better. And the media is just part of the globalist group that wants to do that. Let's see. There are going to be some good movies in the future. That is true. Breaking Down Q. That'd be a good one. Most of my books that are designed to teach are made simple. So there's Divine Healing made simple, Hearing God's Voice made simple, Seeing in the Spirit made simple. And I think the title for my book is going to be QAnon Made Simple. My YouTube channel is it's Praying Medic. You can go on YouTube, and I've got probably 9 or 10, maybe 12 Q videos on there. If you're new to Q, if Q is new to you and you're just starting out, I would strongly recommend checking out the video QAnon Made Simple. One night I got on Periscope, and I did about an hour video where I explained where Q began, how it all began, why people follow Q, what Q claims, who Q claims to be, some of the reasons why we believe Q is true, some basic structure of the posts and his history. And people really like that video. It's like I said, it's about an hour. It's a good intro to Q. And then if you find that helpful, I have all of these broadcasts that I do where I go through all the Q posts. They're all on YouTube, and they're all on Periscope too. If you want to spend a little binge time on Q, you can do that.
Somebody in your chat was saying that they use shells on the internet to control data, that the CIA does this.
Think shell?
Yeah, so that's what I'm looking up right now, web shells.
Yeah. Above my pay grade.
Remote access web shells.
Okay.
So it's a way of taking and gaining remote control of an internet-facing web server.
Oh, gotcha. Gotcha. So it's like an invisible way to control something. Cool.
So if somebody wants to research that...
Does the CIA run everything? Well, Q said something interesting. I think it was in the previous set of posts. Said FBI, DOJ, Department of Justice, Obama White House, State Department. So public narrative, FBI, DOJ, State Department, White House. Private narrative, clowns, 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 clowns. Q is basically saying that the CIA really is kind of underpinning most of the three-letter agencies and most of what was going on in our government for a long time now. President Trump has taken over, and he has put the CIA in the back seat and is putting the CIA on a short leash. But look, the CIA has been doing what it's been doing for the last 75 years. So it's going to take some time to dismantle that agency. And I should probably say this. I was going to do a YouTube video just about this subject, but you know, I might as well. It's 6:30. I got about another half hour I can talk. Let me just say this, because some people, when you start following Q, and Q is obviously pitting the NSA against the CIA, and Q, I believe, has an NSA background, and Q is trying to help us understand that. I mean, I believe, I'm not saying that's for sure, I think Q has some connection to the NSA. I don't know if it's background, military, whatever. Just my thought. When I look at what Q posts, I see somebody who is very familiar with the NSA and familiar with the CIA, but from an outside perspective. So something to keep in mind with all of these posts about Snowden and Assange, and Snowden and the NSA, and Snowden and the CIA. I don't want to give people the impression that I'm totally on board with everything that the NSA does. And NSA is all great and wonderful and amazing, and everything the CIA does is crap. Sometimes it comes off that way. I'm simply trying to help you all understand what Q is saying about the NSA and the CIA. Now, a lot of people are very upset because the NSA gathers all of our information, all of our private information. It's gathered up by the NSA and it's held on servers. So if you are a privacy advocate, that is going to irritate you just knowing that the NSA has your information. But I would question the reason why you're angry. So let's go down a little pathway. I'm just going to ask you some questions, rhetorical questions. Are you angry because they have your information? Or are you angry because they've done something with your information? Ask yourself that question. Now, ask yourself this. We know that the CIA has a supercomputer, an array of supercomputers that is very much like the NSA's. It's the hammer. And it gathers data on people around the world, but also on Americans. So the CIA and the NSA have this huge database with your private information. Are you upset because they have your private information? Or are you upset because they might do something with it? Okay, so let me ask you this. When you go to a bank, you give the bank your debit card, your credit card, and you can do transactions, make withdrawals, make deposits. Do you trust the bank with your financial information? Do you trust them? Well, you must trust them because you let them have your address, your phone number, your contact information, your banking information. So you have to trust your bank with your information. So ask yourself this question. Are you angry because the bank has your private information or not? A lot of people aren't. The bank has your private information. The question is, are they doing anything nefarious with it? And do you trust them? Okay, most people trust their banks with their private information because a bank is supposed to be trustworthy. Now, what happens when Experian and all of these credit reporting agencies have your private information and they accidentally release over 100 million Americans' private social security number, bank account information, and they put it out there on the internet for hackers to get at? So our information, our private information, is made available to hackers. Now you're going to be angry because something nefarious has been done with your private information. You gave it to someone you trusted, and they gave it to someone that can't be trusted. So we give our private information to people all the time. We have to. When you go to get your driver's license, when you go to take out a loan, when you go to get a job, you have to give them your social security number. If you're going to do direct deposit, they have to have your bank account number. We have to give people our private information all the time. That is part of living in the 21st century. You have to give people your private information. The question is, what are they doing with it? Okay, so the point I'm trying to make here is it's not a bad thing for someone to have your information. It is a bad thing if they do something nefarious with that information. Now, has the NSA ever, that you know of, have they ever done anything corrupt with your private information? Has the NSA ever been involved in mind control projects? Has the NSA ever done a regime change and toppled a dictator and started a war on another part of the world to get rid of somebody? Has the NSA ever taken control of somebody's car and made it crash? Has the NSA ever done the things? No. The NSA has never been accused of any of that stuff. That stuff is all. Something right now, honey. That stuff is, when you hear about those things, you generally, that is in the context of what the CIA does. The CIA deposes dictators. The CIA gets the information and they control people's cars and things of that nature. Usually that is the CIA that's doing that, not the NSA.
We'll read up on it though.
Okay. All right. All right. Now, I'm not saying nobody in the NSA has ever done anything evil, but I'm saying, generally speaking, if you give your information to the NSA or if you give it to the CIA, there's a lot bigger chance something bad is going to happen with your information if it's in the hands of the CIA. The NSA isn't perfectly squeaky clean, but they're not as bad as the CIA. So from that perspective, the fact is that these agencies have your information. The question is, what are they doing with it? Are they actively taking your information and using it? Look, You are one, and if you're in America, you're one of 325 million people that the NSA has your information. It's piled into this array of computers. And what happens to it? It's sitting on a little chip of silicon somewhere. And do you actually think that the NSA has enough people that they can categorize and take your information and personalize it and look into everything all 325 million Americans are doing? Do they have the manpower to do that? No, they don't. Your data sits on a server, and there is nothing wrong with it sitting there until somebody accesses your data and wants to do something with it. So if the NSA accesses your data and they give it to the Department of Justice so that they can do an illegal warrant on you or a wiretap, or they give it to the FBI so the FBI can do some trumped up charges and arrest you, or if they give it to some other agency, three-letter agency, where they can illegally spy on you, arrest you, prosecute you, whatever, that's the problem with the NSA having our information. It's when they take that information and use it for an evil purpose. If the NSA just has the information and doesn't do anything with it, how is it hurting us? If nothing is done with your information, if no one ever sees it, if no one ever does anything with it, is it intrinsically evil for them just to have it if they don't do anything with it? These are the kinds of questions that people need to think about, because, you know, Q has been asking us all along, who do you trust? Do you trust your bank with your information? Do you trust the CIA with your information? Do you trust the FBI with your information? Or do you trust the NSA with your information? It's a question of who do you trust. Who is going to take care of your information best? And I'm not going to give you an answer to that question, but I am going to suggest that those questions are worth thinking about and asking yourself, who do I really trust? Who can't be trusted? Who can be trusted? Who has betrayed our trust in the past? And who has not betrayed our trust in the past? Because right now we're in a situation where they're going to have our information and there isn't a whole lot we can do. I would love it if they would just get rid of all those supercomputers and not have our information. The likelihood of that happening seems really remote. So if they're going to have our information, then the question then becomes, what are they going to do with it? So the issue is much bigger than just simply them having your information. All right. That is my rant for this afternoon. Now I have to catch up on the comments and see if there's any questions. Right. Data is stored for future reference. Truth worker. The only way that our intelligence community can stop a potential terrorist attack is if they are monitoring phone calls, emails, and text messages of potential terrorists, right? If they pick up phone calls, text messages, and emails of potential terrorists communicating a plot to bomb a building, they can arrest those people and put them in jail before they bomb the building. How do they do that? They have access to their information. They have access to their text messages, their phone calls, their chats, their direct messages on social media. They have access to it. And if they're scanning it and they find out ahead of time, they can prevent terrorist attacks. That is the good use of surveillance. The problem is that they can't just do surveillance on one person or 10 people or 100 people. If they're going to use surveillance to prevent crime, they have to surveil everybody. They have to spy on all of us. They have to get all of our information, store it, and then selectively go through and determine which of this information is going to lead to a terrorist being brought down, a theft being prevented, a murder from from happening. That's what the intelligence community, they're charged with. If they're going to take all our information, they have to use it judiciously and sort through it and only act upon the information that presents a threat to someone. So that's what the information is. That's why they have the information. Hopefully, we have to put people in those positions, in those agencies that we can trust. That's the problem. The problem is they've already got our information. What we have to do is we have to insist that there are responsible people in those agencies that are not going to abuse their power and misuse the information. It is a necessary evil, unfortunately. Francis, yeah, that's my view of it.
Well, now that we've let all these terrorists into our country, it is.
Well, so someone says you can't trust anyone. I trust Trump. I voted for President Trump, and I've been watching him, and he's not a perfect man by any means, but I trust him. I also trust Jeff Sessions. There are certain people in the government that I trust. I trust Mick Mulvaney. I trust some people in government. I trust a few people because I've watched them, I've seen what they've done, and they have earned my trust. I refuse to go through life not trusting anyone. My trust is not earned easily, but some people have earned my trust. Elect godly people of integrity. Oh, there is a good idea. Yes. I think I trust Horowitz. I don't know enough about Horowitz yet, but what I've read about Horowitz gives me no reason not to trust Horowitz. I'll say that. I trust Grassley and Nunez. We have a lot of information on those two guys. They're trustworthy. And I would say Bob Goodlatte is trustworthy too. As far as with respect to the way they run their committees, I think they're trustworthy. Yes, Trump has been one of the most surveilled people in America for probably a decade, and they weren't really able to find any dirt on him. If you can't trust that guy, I don't know who you can trust. He's been through the ringer. I think Chris Wray should be trusted, not as much as Sessions. I don't know as much about Chris Wray as I do Sessions. Sessions has a pretty long public history. I think he's a man of integrity. I think Sessions can be trusted. Chris Wray, I'm inclined to trust him until he screws something up. And he inherited a mess at the FBI. And I know some people are really angry at Chris Wray, but he stepped into a hornet's nest. And we have to give him some time to straighten that thing out. Before we go after Chris Wray with torches and pitchforks, we have to give him a chance to fix it. So I'm inclined to trust Wray for right now. There's a bunch of people who don't trust Pence, and it's mostly because there are some YouTubers out there who have essentially said that Pence is involved in pedophilia. And my view is that they're misinterpreting some of the things that Q has dropped. So I have no reason not to trust Pence. And I would say this, if your mistrust of Pence is related to things that Q has posted in the past. Q just posted about Pence last week during the Olympics when Q asked, why is Pence being seen with Kim Jong-un's sister? And there was a discussion about Pence, and it was a long stringer. And if Pence could not be trusted, if Pence was involved in pedophilia, why hasn't Q told us anything about Pence? The only thing I've seen from Q about Pence has been positive. So I don't quite understand where people are getting the information from where they say Pence can't be trusted. If Trump trusts Pence, then I trust Pence. I think there's no reason not to trust him. Truth Hurts. You can contact me through my website, prayingmedic.com. You can contact me through direct message on Twitter. All my direct messages are open. You don't have to. I don't have to follow you, so you can do that. It's admin@prayingmedic.com is my email address. I do respond to all my emails personally every day or two. If you need to contact me.
Who told us about the shell thing.
Oh, you're the one that told me about the shell thing. Okay,
and
cool.
And a little tip about the NSA.
Oh, okay. Good to know. Thanks. Yeah, just email me or DM me through my website. Thanks, Truth Hurts. You don't know how I trust Q so much? Oh, well, you are not me. Look, I am
It's not a matter of trust, I don't think. Well,
for me it is. Look, I used to be an atheist, and I used to be very skeptical. And I have since, over the last 10 years, become a person of faith. I walk by faith. I live my life by faith. I trust that God's going to do things. I have faith for the miraculous. I see people healed. I see miracles. It's not difficult for me to develop faith in something or someone if they prove themselves to be trustworthy. Q has proven himself to be trustworthy. I have had dreams where I've met Q and we've talked about things. My experience with Q is quite different from everyone else's, so I am prone to trust Q more than most people because my experiences are different. No updates on Schiff and the Hotel Standard that I know of, but I'm not really heavily involved in the research boards. Hey, Fritz, I don't think the NSA needs any of our information, but they have it. What they have and what they need are two different things. Nobody needs to drive a Corvette, a 650 horsepower Corvette. Nobody needs to have an AR-15, but we live in America where you are entitled and you have a right to drive whatever kind of car you want and have whatever kind of gun you want. So in America, you're not entitled to what you need. You are given a Bill of Rights that tells you what you have a right to have if you want. If it's freedom. So freedom does come at a cost. Oh, I Cracked a Mirror is here. How's it going? Good to see ya. Or a Chevette. That is correct. All right. Q is not just one person, or is he? There's lots of debate about who Q is, and I think they are the least helpful debates that people have. debating about whether Q is one person or a group of people, debating whether Q is Mike Flynn or General Kelly or somebody else. I don't think those discussions are very helpful. I really wish people would stop having those discussions because they're not helpful. Q does not want us to know who Q is. I will say this, my personal belief is that Q is one person. If you just look at the way Q posts, the sense of humor, the sense of rhythm, the sense of patriotism, the sense that there's a vernacular that Q uses that to me is unique to one individual. I'm used to looking at reports and writing and communications from many different people. Everybody that I communicate with has a different way of writing, a different way of communicating. Q has a unique and distinct way of communicating that to me says this is one person. That's just my personal opinion. I'm not telling you you have to believe that, but to me, Q communicates in a distinct, individualistic way that makes me think Q is one person. Now, having said that, I do believe there is a group of people who are similar to Q. They all have high level clearance, and they're all dropping information to different people. But it's very similar information. The packet of information they have is the same information. It's going to different sources. And I believe Q is part of a group, but I believe the posts that we're getting from Q are coming from one of those people. That's just my belief. And you're free to believe something else if you want to. It doesn't matter to me. I'm not here to tell you what to believe. I'm not here to tell you who to follow. I'm not here to endorse Dr. Corsi or Tracy Beans or anybody else. I think they're good people. I think they do good work. I have learned a lot from all of those people. So, follow who you want to follow, learn what you want to learn. Don't take anyone's opinions or views as gospel. Research everything yourself. Do your own research, do your own studying, pray and ask God to show you the truth. That's what God has done to me. God has shown me the truth. I ask God to just, look, I take my own agenda as much as I can and I put it on the altar and I say, okay, God, here is my agenda. Here are my views and my opinions. Why don't you tell me the truth? And God does that. And many times what God shows me is the opposite of what I thought. I was a big Q skeptic at first. I didn't think anything of Q. But then God showed me that I was wrong about Q. And when God, I like it when he, takes my view of things and says, yeah, you're wrong. Here's the truth. And when he does that, I'm pretty quick to get on board with it. So. Q's info is very consistent. That is one of the things that impresses me. Dilly's source, I haven't talked to Brendan extensively about the way his source talks to him. He has said that his source tried using the Socratic method the way Q does a long time ago. And Brendan was like, yeah, that ain't happening. I don't work that way. Just tell me what you want to tell me. So Brendan and his source have worked out a way that works for them. Sometimes Brendan's source does sound like Q, sometimes not. Just depends. Getting some good comments here. I'm actually reading a lot of them. Thankfully, I took the Evelyn Wood speed reading course. That is one of the reasons why I have a little more confidence in Q is because Brendan's source has been giving him intel that lines up really well with Q. And there are other people that are also getting information from sources, and all of it lines up. There's 3 or 4 streams of information coming out, and all of it is consistent and all lines up, which to me, when you have, many different data points that all match up, that tells me that these people can be trusted. Why is Q so cryptic? Q is cryptic for a couple of reasons. One of which is that Q doesn't want to come right out and tell you what you need to think. Q doesn't want to come out and tell you what to believe. Q doesn't want to come out and tell you what is true and what is false. Q is, in that respect, Q is very much like God. The dreams that I get from God, he won't actually come right out and tell me, this is what you need to know. He'll give me a dream, it'll be a symbolic dream, and it will represent the truth. And then I have to mull it over, and I have to decode the symbolism, and I have to arrive at the truth myself. Because if you discover the truth for yourself, it becomes true for you. If someone else tells you the truth, it's their truth. If I tell you a fact, or I tell you something that I think happened, or I give you a report of something, you're getting secondhand information. And you have to trust me as a source, and you're taking my information. And you may accept it, but if somebody else tomorrow comes along and gives you a different perspective on that same thing, that person may convince you that I was wrong and they're right. So when you get the truth, or you get the facts from somebody else secondhand, it doesn't make as strong as an impression on you as if you discover it for yourself. When you discover the truth for yourself, no one is going to convince you that it's not true. That is what Q is trying to do. Q is giving us crumbs and is telling you, go and do the research and learn and explore and find out what actually happened. Q points us in a direction and says, the answers are over there. Go find the answers. That is exactly what God does to me. God doesn't tell me, how do I get somebody healed of emotional trauma? He says, look, here are some things to think about. Here are some answers over there. Try these methods and techniques, and you will find out what works and what doesn't work. So unfortunately, we live in a society where people are trained to think that they just need someone to tell them the truth. We live in a culture where people expect, just tell me what to believe, just tell me what to think. I don't want to think for myself. I don't want to have to do research. I don't want to have to find my own truth. Just tell me what is true, right? When you sit in front of a TV for 4 or 5 hours a day, or you sit in front of a computer, you just digest what everybody else is telling you, you're living a passive lifestyle where you really just want people to tell you what to believe. You want them to feed you the truth, feed you what's going on, and you're just going to believe whatever they tell you. And Q is trying to wean us from that habit of being told point blank, this is the fact, this is the truth, this is what happened. Because that's what CNN, New York Times, Fox News, they all want to package the information, give it to you, and have you believe it 100% is truth. Q is not like that. Q expects us to find the truth for ourselves. That is why Q is cryptic. Q wants us to learn the truth for ourselves. And the other reason why Q is cryptic is Q is working against people in the deep state who are trying to thwart him and trying to figure out where he's going next, and they're trying to stop him. And his cryptic posts are intended to keep them off balance so they don't necessarily know where he's going in the future. That is part of the reason why Q is cryptic. So if it's frustrating for you, just know that it's also frustrating for the people that are trying to stop Q. Did Emperor Rex get suspended? Yes. I just saw a comment in there, a question. I've been seeing people posting, Rising Serpent posted that Emperor Rex has been suspended and doesn't want to talk about it. There's a reason for it, and he's not able to talk about it. I don't know if it's temporary or permanent. I haven't been on Twitter that much today, but I did see that. It's not your truth if it's not your truth. That is correct. Only words to my question of meaning. I can't tell you now, but you'll soon find out. That's good. Teach a man to fish. Correct. Q is trying to teach us how to find the truth for ourselves, how to learn, how to piece things together and come to a logical understanding of what's really happening without having somebody on a TV show tell us what to believe or what to think or what happened. Critical thinking, exactly. How many times does Q say, think bigger, expand your thinking? Why do you think Q keeps on saying that? Because Q does not want you to think small and to just accept what other people tell you. Q does not want you to listen to me, watch my YouTube channel, or go to Tracy Bean's YouTube channel or Jerome Corsi and just accept what they say as the truth. Q wants you to think critically, think objectively, and discover the truth and own it. Who is greater, God or Q? Since God made Q and the rest of us, I believe God is greater. We should not put Q up on a pedestal. Q is a good source of information, I think. But Q is a human just like the rest of us. All right. Hey, guess what? Bang Bang Bar is going to start, and I'm going to jump off of here. Thank you all for joining us on this adventure. Thank you for the really good questions and comments in the chat. Y'all are making me think, and that's a good thing. Hopefully Q will give me one or 2 days off so I can write some books. All right. Love you all. Take care. I will catch you on the Bang Bang Bar or my next Periscope.